married daughters. Admittedly, the marriage of Lydia, the youngest, aged only 16, was not propitious. She had eloped with Lieutenant George Wickham, an officer in the militia which had been stationed at Meryton, an escapade which was confidently expected to end, as all such adventures deserve, in her desertion by Wickham, banishment from her home, rejection from society, and the final degradation, which decency forbade the ladies to mention. The marriage had, however, taken place, the first news being brought by a neighbour, William Goulding, when he rode past the Longbourn coach, and the newly married Mrs. Wickham placed her hand on the open window so that he could see the ring. Mrs. Bennet's sister, Mrs. Phillips, was assiduous in circulating her version of the elopement, that the couple had been on their way to Gretna Green, but had made a short stop in London to enable Wickham to inform a godmother of his forthcoming nuptials, and on the arrival of Mr. Bennet in search of his daughter, the couple had accepted the family's suggestion that the intended marriage could more conveniently take place in London. No one believed this fabrication, but it was acknowledged that Mrs. Phillips's ingenuity in devising it deserved at least a show of credulity. George Wickham, of course, could never be accepted in Meryton again, to rob the female servants of their virtue and the shopkeepers of their profit, but it was agreed that, should his wife come among them, Mrs. Wickham should be afforded the tolerant forbearance previously accorded to Miss Lydia Bennet. There was much speculation about how the belated marriage had been achieved. Mr. Bennet's estate was hardly worth £2,000 a year, and it was commonly felt that Mr. Wickham would have held out for at least 500, and all his Meryton and other bills being paid, before consenting to the marriage. Mrs. Bennet's brother, Mr. Gardiner, must have come up with the money. He was known to be a warm man, but he had a family, and no doubt would expect repayment from Mr. Bennet. There was considerable anxiety in Lucas Lodge that their son-in-law's inheritance might be much diminished by this necessity, but when no trees were felled, no land sold, no servants put off, and the butcher showed no disinclination to provide Mrs. Bennet with her customary weekly order, it was assumed that Mr. Collins and dear Charlotte had nothing to fear, and that as soon as Mr. Bennet was decently buried, Mr. Collins could take possession of the Longbourn estate with every confidence that it had remained intact. But the engagement, which followed shortly after Lydia's marriage, that of Miss Bennet and Mr. Bingley of Netherfield Park, was received with approbation. It was hardly unexpected. Mr. Bingley's admiration for Jane had been apparent from their first meeting at an assembly ball. Miss Bennet's beauty, gentleness, and the naive optimism about human nature, which inclined her never to speak ill of anyone, made her a general favourite. But within days of the engagement of her eldest to Mr. Bingley being announced, an even greater triumph for Mrs. Bennet was noised abroad, and was at first received with incredulity. Miss Elizabeth Bennet, the second daughter, was to marry Mr. Darcy, the owner of Pemberley, one of the greatest houses in Derbyshire, and, it was rumoured, with an income of £10,000 a year. It was common knowledge in Meryton that Miss Lizzie hated Mr. Darcy, an emotion in general held by those ladies and gentlemen who had attended the first assembly ball, at which Mr. Darcy had been present with Mr. Bingley and his two sisters, and at which he had given adequate evidence of his pride and arrogant disdain of the company, making it clear, despite the prompting of his friend Mr. Bingley, that no woman present was worthy to be his partner. Indeed, when Sir William Lucas had introduced Elizabeth to him, Mr. Darcy had declined to dance with her, later telling Mr. Bingley that she was not pretty enough to tempt him. It was taken for granted that no woman could be happy as Mrs. Darcy, for, as Maria Lucas pointed out, who would want to have that disagreeable face opposite you at the breakfast table for the rest of your life? But there was no cause to blame Miss Elizabeth Bennet for taking a more prudent and optimistic view. One cannot have everything in life.